It's 11:47 p.m. He said he'd be done with dinner by 8. He walked in at 10:15, kissed you on the forehead, said, "Sorry, work ran late," and went straight to the shower. Nothing about that sentence was a lie. Nothing about his face was angry. Nothing about his tone was cold. And yet, your stomach is in knots. Something feels off, and you don't know why. If you've ever felt this, a quiet, nagging wrongness with no evidence to back it up, I need you to hear this clearly. That feeling is not paranoia. It's not overthinking. It is one of the oldest survival systems in the human brain, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why it activates, what it's actually detecting, and the one specific thing almost nobody tells you to do when it happens. A technique we're saving for the very end, because it changes how you'll handle every relationship for the rest of your life. Here's the first thing that's going to sound strange. Your gut feeling isn't emotional, it's data. Your brain has been quietly recording thousands of tiny details about this person since the day you met them. The rhythm of their texts, the pitch of their voice, how long they hold eye contact when they're comfortable versus when they're not. You don't consciously remember collecting any of it, but somewhere underneath your conscious mind, a pattern just broke. And that break is what you're feeling as off. And here's where it gets counterintuitive. The part that seems completely wrong at first. Most people believe that if something's wrong, they'll feel something big. Anger, suspicion, a dramatic confrontation moment like in the movies. But real relationship red flags almost never announce themselves loudly. In fact, the more emotionally intelligent your partner is, the quieter the wrongness feels, because subtle avoidance is harder to catch than obvious lying. We're going to unpack exactly why that is. But first, let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body when this feeling hits. When something in your environment doesn't match your expectations, even by a tiny margin, your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, fires before your rational mind even gets a vote. This is why you can feel unsettled before you can explain why. Psychologists call this affective realism. Your feelings are shaping your perception of reality in real time. It's actually one of the most sophisticated protective mechanisms you have. And it's about to lead us into the first real pattern we need to talk about. The first pattern is what I call the silence that talks. This is when your partner isn't lying with words. They're lying with omission. They're not hiding an affair or a secret bank account necessarily. Sometimes it's smaller. They stop mentioning a coworker's name they used to bring up all the time. They answer, "How was your day?" with fewer and fewer details. They used to narrate their whole day to you. Now you get a one-word summary and a topic change. Individually, none of these mean anything, but your nervous system doesn't process things individually. It processes trends. Think about it like this. If someone hands you one puzzle piece, you can't see a picture, but hand you 50 pieces over 3 months, and suddenly, without even trying, your brain starts assembling an image. That's what's happening when you say, "I can't explain it. I just feel like he's pulling away." You're not imagining a picture. You're seeing one that's already 80% built. You just haven't consciously looked at all the pieces yet. Now here's the twist, and this is important, so stay with me. Not every version of the silence that talks means betrayal. Sometimes it means burnout. Sometimes it means depression, or work stress, or unresolved grief they haven't told you about yet. The feeling of off doesn't always point to deception. Sometimes it points to disconnection, which is a different problem with a different solution. And figuring out which one you're dealing with is exactly what we're going to cover in Pattern 2. Pattern 2 is what therapists call incongruence, when someone's words say one thing, but everything else about them says another. Picture this. You ask, "Is everything okay between us?" And he says, "Yeah, totally. Why wouldn't it be?" But his shoulders tense up first. His eyes flick away for half a second before they come back to meet yours. His voice goes up half an octave, on the word totally. That's incongruence. The words pass the test. The delivery fails it. Here's why this matters so much. Studies on nonverbal communication have found that when verbal and nonverbal signals conflict, people almost always trust the nonverbal ones, even if they can't explain why. That's not a coincidence. Body language is much harder to consciously control than words are. Your partner can rehearse a sentence. It's a lot harder to rehearse a calm nervous system. So when your gut trusts the flinch over the sentence, it's not being dramatic. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. I want you to pause here for a second and actually think about this. Has there been a moment recently where your partner said the right thing, but something in how they said it didn't sit right with you? Hold that memory. We're going to come back to it because it connects directly to the biggest insight of this whole video, one most people never realize until years into a relationship. Pattern 3 is the sneakiest one, and honestly, it's the one I think causes the most damage over time. It's called the slow redefinition of normal, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Small boundary crossings that would have alarmed you in month 1 of the relationship start to feel unremarkable by month 12. Canceling plans last minute, dismissing your feelings as too sensitive, small jabs disguised as jokes. On their own, in isolation, they seem forgivable. But relationships aren't lived in isolation. They're lived in accumulation. This is what psychologists sometimes call boundary erosion. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to accept being treated worse than they deserve. It happens one small compromise at a time, so gradually that by the time the water is cloudy, you've forgotten what clear even looked like. This is exactly why that off feeling matters so much. It might be the last honest signal left, cutting through months of slow, quiet normalization. Your gut remembers what clear water looked like, even when your conscious mind has adjusted to the fog. And here's an uncomfortable truth we need to sit with for a second. Sometimes the off feeling isn't about something your partner is hiding from you. Sometimes it's about something you're hiding from yourself, a truth you already half know but haven't let yourself fully look at. Because looking at it means having to make a decision you're not ready to make. That's not weakness. That's self-protection. But it's also exactly why so many people stay in the fog for way longer than they should. Which brings us to pattern 4, and this is the one that requires the most honesty. Not every off feeling is about your partner's behavior. Sometimes it's an old wound speaking through a new relationship. If you were cheated on before, or grew up with a parent who was emotionally unpredictable, your nervous system may be primed to detect danger even in safe situations, because to your body, uncertainty itself feels like danger, regardless of the source. This doesn't mean the feeling is wrong. It means the feeling deserves investigation, not instant judgment either way. This is the part that separates emotionally healthy relationships from anxious ones. It's not about ignoring the feeling. It's not about obeying it blindly either. It's about asking a better question. Instead of asking, "Is something wrong with him?" ask, "What specifically changed? When did it change? And does the story he's telling me match the pattern I'm actually observing?" That question moves you from reacting to investigating. And investigating is where your power actually lives. Now, remember loop 3 from the very beginning? The technique we promised to reveal? Here it is, and I want you to actually use this, not just watch it. Whenever you feel that off sensation, don't act on it immediately, and don't dismiss it either. Instead, quietly track it, mentally or even in a private note, for 3 weeks. Not to build a case against them, to see whether the behavior is a one-time dip or a pattern. Here's why 3 weeks specifically. It's long enough to separate a bad week from a real shift, but short enough that you're not gaslighting yourself into waiting years for clarity. If the behavior was situational, stress, a hard month at work, grief, burnout, It will loosen within that window, especially if you communicate what you noticed. But if it deepens, or if your partner reacts to your concern with defensiveness instead of openness, that's not proof of guilt, but it is information. And information is what turns anxiety into clarity. So if you're sitting with that feeling right now, that quiet, unshakable sense that something isn't quite right, I want you to know two things. First, you are not broken, and you are not overreacting. Your mind is doing exactly what it was built to do. And second, the goal was never to catch someone in a lie. The goal is to protect your own clarity in a world that often asks you to doubt yourself into silence. Trust the signal enough to investigate it. Don't trust it so much that you skip the investigating altogether. And if this video helped put language to something you felt but couldn't explain, there's a pattern we haven't touched yet. The specific phrases people use, almost like a script, when they're trying to hide something without technically lying. It's subtler than anything we covered today. And once you learn it, you'll never hear "I'm fine" the same way again. That's exactly where we're headed next. Stay with me.